What's going on, guys? Welcome back to BlackTideTV. Happy Wednesday. You know what that means? It is time for a new epic variant review. In today's video, we're taking a look at the NV4 Chaos. Now, the NV4 Chaos is one of those new epic variants that we got recently. There was 3 new epic variants added: the NV4 Chaos, the Banshee Doppler, and the KBS Longbow Harbinger. I've already recorded a video for the Harbinger and the Doppler. Both of those will be linked in the cards in the top right corner if you did miss them, and one or the other will likely be linked in the description down below. So the NV4 Chaos is the final new epic variant that we have to review, and then we're back into standard epic variant reviews. We're kind of a bit behind on the standard ones. We've got the Wrecked coming up next, the R3KT, and then we've got the RAW Liberty after that. So this Saturday, expect to see the R3KT, and then the next Wednesday, we're going to be seeing the RAW Liberty, or the Raw Liberty. After that, I've got a new poll coming out tonight, so if you guys want to choose which epic variant you want to see next, I will be putting out a 7-day long poll with this video. So on Twitter, at BlackTideTV, head over there when you're done this video and vote out of the 4 choices which variant you'd like to see next. Whichever variant receives the most votes will be made into an epic variant review the following Saturday. So not this Saturday coming up, not the Wednesday after that Saturday, but the Saturday of next week. So definitely head over there, check out which options you have, and let me know which variant you'd like to see next. Without further ado, let's take a look at the NV4 Chaos. Now, something I should say about the NV4 Chaos gameplay that you're seeing here is something that I mentioned with my Howitzer Golden Weapon Review gameplay, I believe. So in the Howitzer Golden Weapon Review, I did very well with my gameplay. I was like 30 some kills with very few deaths, and it made it look like the Howitzer was a really great weapon. And I really had to specify in that video, I said, guys, just because the gameplay looks good does not mean that the weapon is really great. And the same thing goes with the NV4 Chaos. I think I picked up a 15 kill streak at the beginning there, and I believe I'm going to go like 64 and 16 or something like that in a kill confirmed game. So yeah, I did pretty good as well as far as my standards allow anyways. And I just want to mention that just because I did that good does not make the NV4 Chaos, well, that great. So just some food for thought as we move throughout this video. Now, something that got me intrigued about the NV4 Chaos before even knowing what any of the traits did was the name of the epic trait itself. Generally, traits have this special name. They usually have a funny little pun, or maybe it's a catch-all descriptor word, but the name of this epic trait is Celerity, and I don't know about you guys, but I had never heard this word before, like ever, anywhere. And don't get me wrong, I do have a pretty good education. I am quite intelligent as far as I know, but I'd never heard this word before. Maybe it's because it's high society or something. Like, it feels very high society to me. So I actually had to look up this word, and no wonder I had never heard of it before. It was most used in the 19th century. Yeah, the 19th century, as in the 1800s. This is when it was most used. And ever since then, it's been on a steady decline in use every single year, to the point where it's barely ever used in today's society. So I'm not surprised now that I didn't know what it was, but celerity means swiftness of movement, which sort of applies to this trait, but not really. Not totally, because it only really applies to half of this trait, as the trait itself, as you can see on the screen, I've thrown up the card, gives you increased hipfire rate and reduces your aim down sights fire rate. And of course, steady, your common trait, reduces your hipfire spread, and it does stack with laser sight. As you'll find with most variants, the common trait is pretty easy to wrap your head around. Steady reduces your hipfire spread, essentially making you more accurate when you're hip firing. And although that's pretty straightforward and puts us all on the same page, I may still be a paragraph or 2 ahead of you with my knowledge that the key to a great variant is having 2 traits that really complement each other, 2 traits that go together really well, and the celerity trait and the steady trait work hand in hand. The biggest benefit to the celerity trait is the increased fire rate when hip firing the NV4, and of course when you're always hip firing, you're obviously going to benefit from increased accuracy, especially when you're firing off so many bullets so quickly. You'll actually find that a lot of your bullets, if you didn't have that increased accuracy, might miss even more. So having that increased accuracy with the steady trait is obviously really great. And of course, that stacking with laser sight, you're probably going to want to use laser sight on this weapon in the long run if you do end up choosing to use it. Having recently mentioned the major benefit of the celerity trait being its increased hipfire fire rate, you're likely wondering what that hipfire fire rate really is compared to the standard NV4. On top of that, we do have a deficit to the aim down sights fire rate, which we'll also be talking about. Now, in these videos, I usually include a hand testing clip. I'll show you guys what I did with the testing. However, I didn't have to test this one because there are hard stats out there in the Reddit spreadsheets and all that good stuff. So I have some hard stats for you instead. Something worth mentioning briefly before we get started, before I start throwing all these numbers at you, is the nature of the numbers themselves. These numbers are the coded RPM or rounds per minute for each of the NV4 variants that we're discussing. And what needs to be taken into account, at least on the console versions of Call of Duty, is the frame rounding. On console, the game can only run at 60 frames per second, and that will actually impact how fast your weapons can fire. It will change how you perceive their fire rate. So generally, say we're looking at the standard NV4 fire rate of 612, the standard RPM of 612, that might be rounded down to 600 per se. But I don't know exactly how to round for frame rounding, so what I'm going to do instead is tell you the actual coded RPM of the NV4, of the NV4 Chaos when it's hip fired, and the NV4 Chaos when it's aimed down sights, and then we're going to compare it like that, and just know that it will be changed a little bit, but the benefit and deficit of the aim down sights and hip fire is still there. It's just there in some similar but not exact capacity. I know, it's kind of complicated. Now you see why I didn't want to get into all the frame rounding stuff, but you'll understand the whole benefit deficit thing in a second as I explain these numbers. So the standard fire rate, as previously mentioned, of the NV4 is 612, so 612 rounds per minute. Now, what you're going to get when you're aiming down sights is 571 rounds per minute, which is the exact same speed that the flatline fires at. If you did not know, the NV4 flatline, the original epic variant of the NV4 in this game, fires at a slower rate of fire than any other NV4 at 571. So that is 41 rounds per minute less than the standard NV4. If you're wondering now whether to be amazed or if you should be nonplussed, that is a pretty big gap. Almost 50 rounds per minute is a very, very noticeable fire rate difference. It does fire quite a bit slower than the standard NV4, and in a matchup where you come 1v1 against a standard NV4 with, say, the flatline or with, say, the Chaos when you're aiming down sights, that enemy NV4 will kill you. Hands down every single time, unless some different little environmental things are at play. So when compared to the standard NV4's 612 rounds per minute, we're losing 41 rounds per minute when aiming down sights. So we have to be making up at least as much as that when we're hip firing, correct? Well, not quite. When we're hip firing, we're getting 650 rounds per minute, which is only 38 rounds per minute higher than the standard NV4 612. And something you may have noticed there is that 38 and 41 are very different numbers, and when frame rounding comes into effect, those numbers will change drastically, spreading out that difference quite a bit. So essentially, you're getting much bigger of a negative than you are a positive when you're using the NV4 Chaos. Now, today's episode has been pretty heavy on the numbers, so let's leave them behind for the time being and just use common sense. When you're aiming down sights with the NV4 Chaos, you're losing quite a bit of fire rate, and you're not even gaining as much fire rate when you're hip firing, and that's the only benefit to using this variant. Now, be honest with yourselves, how much do you actually hip fire the NV4? Probably not that much. The NV4 is the accuracy assault rifle you're supposed to snap aim to targets and take them out with precision at long range. It's not the weapon that you're running in and gunning and spraying people down with. That's more or less the K-bar's job when it comes to assault rifles. If this variant was on the K-bar, it would likely be one of the best variants in the entire game. But as for the NV4, it's just not that great. It really doesn't work with this weapon. It's not worth it. In my opinion, the only time you should ever hipfire the NV4 is in a dire situation. You run around a corner and there's 5 enemies there looking at you and you're going to die anyways, so you might as well just spray and try to kill 1 or 2 of them before you get killed. That's the only time I would ever hipfire the NV4. I think every single time you use this weapon, you should be using it with quick draw and aiming down sights. So this variant just doesn't work. And I would not spend my salvage on it. Even if I got this variant out of a supply drop, I would not use it. Honestly, the gameplay was great, but I could do way better with the standard NV4. But hey, that's just my opinion. Maybe you have some special technique when you're using this weapon. Let us know in the comment section down below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe for more daily gaming goodness. I've got a couple more videos coming out today, so stay tuned for those.